Areas in video games are one of the most common solutions to structure the player's journey. They're extremely different in their visual appearance and also approach game design and mechanics in different ways than the area before. No matter which genre, most games have some sort of areas, and so does the game I'm working on. To be honest, two aren't very much, so today we are going to add a third underwater themed area to the game. And also lots of different content because I don't know why either. Hey everyone, welcome to Devlog number 6 for my game Caves of Umbra. What is Caves of Umbra? It's a mining roguelike game split into a mining phase where you collect resources and progress through levels, and a combat phase where you gather energy so you can survive in the mining phase. As said before, today it's time for a new area that is called Sunken Citadel, but we're also adding things like a new boss fight or weapons and enemies. So if you like what you see in this video, feel free to subscribe and like this video. It would really mean a lot to me. This is Devlog number 6 for Caves of Umbra. Let's begin. But we're starting with something completely different because in the last devlog I added the first shop to the game, which is all about weapons and gadgets, so I think we could use the created systems from last time to create another shop. This shop is not about selling items like the forge, however, because you can buy stuff like a health refill, ammo refill for a selected weapon, or an upgrade for the player's maximum health. When creating the visuals, I wanted to go for something that contrasts the design of the forge, so I went with an air balloon which stores all of the goods, and this rather poor looking merchant. This shop doesn't sell any expensive or highly requested items, so I think it would fit pretty well. In terms of coding, I could simply use the systems for shops that I created last time, except for the part where you need to select a weapon for the ammo refill. While I did that, I also noticed that it would be quite helpful to have a screen where you see the bought item after buying, so I'd adjust that for the new as well as the forge shop. Also, what should I call this new shop? I'm currently calling it General's Shop, but I'm not too happy with the name, so let me know your ideas in the comments. After adding this shop, I began working on gadgets. If you're new to the series, gadgets are attacks or similar special actions that you trigger with the right mouse button. And as of now, there are things like this clear gadget that clears all enemy bullets, or this knife rain gadget that applies the bleeding status effect to all enemies in the arena. So now that all of you know what I'm going to talk about, we can start. So in short, I added new ones. I added a poison bottle gadget that uses the poison status effect. So basically throw a couple of bottles which then explode, and this explosion applies the poison status effect to enemies. The other new gadget is a thunder gadget that summons a few lightnings that deal quite a bit of damage at random positions in the arena. But I worked on one last gadget, which is new though, because I reworked the bomb gadget where you just placed a bomb that exploded after some time. I didn't really like this mechanic of having to wait for the explosion, so I decided on throwing the bomb with an immediate explosion when it lands. Sticking with the combat theme, I did some visual things here and there, like adding something to make the boss arenas feel more distinct. In the case of the mineshaft boss called Oronus, this is an ancient platform in the center of the arena. Other than that, we now got some visual variation in the combat arenas in the Whitewood Hollows area. Before it was just this lush green ground, and now there are stone paths. This fits really well as the walls in the area are also a mix of stone and leaves, and along these paths I also placed some little rocks for extra depth. The next change is not exclusively combat related, so let's switch to the mining phase for a second. Since beginning of making this game, there has been an energy meter. If you run out of that resource, you constantly take damage until death or you regain some. I always had my problems with this one because it doesn't make too much sense. You just gain energy from doing something exhausting, in this case the combat. I never found any way to explain where this energy comes from and how to connect it to the rest of the game's story. Why does the player even have this refillable energy meter. It's definitely time to replace it with something that is actually important to the game. Instead of an energy meter, there's now a darkness meter. I think I already mentioned darkness as an important part of the game with the first boss's design and here and there on the side. But for what I can say now, it is the most important resource of your foe that you can use to your own advantage and survive in the depths of the cave. The game's name, Caves of Umbra, even has the Latin word for shadow, which just confirms the importance of darkness as a resource. But after this little story segment, back to the combat phase and the question where darkness now comes from. It is very simple. As the enemies consist out of darkness, it only makes sense to let them drop this resource on death, and this is also where I get it from and why I enter the combat phase in the first place. I know all of this might be a little overwhelming, but it's the first time talking about the game's story, so I definitely have just a vague vision at this point and only I understand most of the relationships of story elements that I just can't talk about for now. I still hope you get the reason for the darkness thing and so on. So what's now? Are we adding the new area? Let's do it. The Sunken Citadel, an area full of brand new blocks and new ore, new traps and yeah, a ton of water. This is an underwater area which is not like the Whitewood Hollows or abandoned mineshaft, a natural cave, but the ruins of an ancient citadel which is now filled with water. This is the reason for the majority of blocks being bricks or industrial looking traps. I began working on this area just like I did with the jungle one. I created sprites for the walls and background and decided on a general color theme. As you can see, parts of the wall are taken by nature, so you can see rocks and prismarine peeking through the old walls of the citadel. To be clear, I'm not done with this at all because the whole citadel feeling doesn't shine as it should, but for now the walls and background look like this. To support the underwater aesthetic, I also had some tricks up my sleeve, like for example an blue camera overlay so that things look a little more bluish with a little less contrast. The other trick I used was a camera shader that makes things ripple for a short impulse. I redesigned it in a way that it now constantly produces little waves, so I could use that for the underwater aesthetic. Now that we've got the surroundings somewhat done, it's time for some blocks. I added the brick block, pillar block, which is just a visual variant, then the coral and the prismarine blocks, which are both very soft so they don't need as many hits with the pickaxe. In addition, I also used the hardstone variant in this area just like I did in the jungle area. Lastly, there are two more blocks. The first one is a new trap which has a spike on every side. These spikes aren't static however, because with each move of the player the state of the trap changes. I also added the feature to make the trap inverted to the others so you could actually build a sort of puzzle with that. The actual last block on the list is a new ore and it is sapphire, which is not a really rare resource in comparison to, for example, emeralds in the game. Other than that, there's not too much to say about it for now, as there's no shop or anything where you can do something with sapphires yet. So that the mining phase of the Sunken Citadel is in pretty good shape, let's switch up phases and continue with the combat phase, where I first crafted the walls and laid at the ground with these lines that look like tiles. To make things look less generic, I of course needed to draw some sprites for decoration purposes and not forgetting about obstacles too. So I ended up with this palette of assets, most being rocks, kelp and corals. For obstacles we got some that are natural like these rocks or prismarine clusters, but also things like pillars and this collapsed pillar. For now there are no traps in the combat phase of the Sunken Citadel, but that's definitely going to change once I come up with good trap ideas that fit the theme, or maybe if you have an idea, let me know below in the comments. Last but not least, the most important thing, where's this area placed from a progression perspective? Most of you might think that it takes place right after the jungle area, so basically the third area, but for my game I want to make every run feel distinct, and to achieve that there's not only procedural generation and all of this random stuff, but the player's ability to choose their own path. So the first area is going to be the abandoned mineshaft as always, and then you can choose between either the Whitewood Hollows or the Sunken Citadel. The shop area works like a little hub with both elevators, so you can choose which area to traverse, and this is why there's like a transition between three areas at the bottom. So as always, with a new area we also need new enemies for that area. For the Sunken Citadel enemies I also continue to follow the theme of mixing leftovers from the Citadel and nature taking over. So we got nature oriented enemies like the pufferfish, jellyfish or ghosts, and also ones like the Citadel guard and priest. The most special enemies in my opinion here are the jellyfish because of its unique visual design, and the priest because it has a very big and untypical attack range. The Citadel guards on the other hand can be seen as a kind of basic enemy in the underwater area, which has a ranged, melee and giant version similar to the goblin in the mineshaft area. Furthermore, there's one last thing that comes with a new area, and this is new weapons. New weapons exclusive to the Sunken Citadel are the Guard's Spear, which is a fast melee weapon with a rather long range, and the Guard's Gun, a simple gun with very fast shots, short reload time, but quite low accuracy. Beyond the new area though, we got two more weapons. The Rusty Hammer belongs to the set of the Rusty weapons, which means that it is a hammer acquired in the early game. Hammers are a really slow and heavy weapon, but once they hit, they deal a lot of damage, and I'm also planning to make the last hit of a hammer hit harder, but I didn't get that done yet. The other weapon is a ranged one again, and is all about the fire status effect, because it is called the flamethrower. As you can expect, this means you shoot a lot of fire bullets in a charge, so it almost becomes like a little cloud, and each individual bullet doesn't deal much damage, but when they add up, this becomes a really powerful weapon. Now that we've got 4 new weapons, new gadgets and so on, we should really use them to fight a boss. But always having to fight the same mineshaft boss becomes a little boring, so let's add a new one and ignore the fact that this took several weeks to do due to technical difficulties. The jungle boss, God of the Sign Gem, is a snake-like creature that is way more about movement than Uranus. In the first of 2 phases, the boss has 3 moves. It can smash its tail multiple times, so that eggs appear which later release little snake enemies. Then it can perform a jump, which is a quick move to reposition itself, and then there's this bullet pattern attack. Once the boss fight enters the second phase, however, things stay pretty similar. The boss gets faster, but the attacks stay the same, except for them getting more complex. The normal jump attack from before now features 3 consecutive jumps, and the smash attack now ends with one final hit that spawns a spiral of snakes. In the second phase, the boss fight just becomes way more intense and faster than before, and simple attacks just get a lot more complex. In the making process of this boss, there was some hurdles to overcome, like figuring out the right way to flip the boss during the smash attack, or not letting the boss jump outside of the arena or in the wrong direction. It was a lot more difficult than the first boss Uranus, but that just needed completely different systems, to be honest. For now, the new boss doesn't have a name yet, but I'm honestly really happy with its design and gameplay. I lastly made this intro sequence for the boss and also added these eggs around the arena as a decoration like the platform in the Uranus boss fight. If you have watched this far, thanks so much for watching. Being able to make and share this game really means a lot to me, and if you've liked the video, feel free to subscribe to not miss future devlogs. Until the next devlog, I don't have too much of a plan on what to work on at this point, but I'm just saying that there's a new area without a boss fight, and the game may need a hub area at some point. For now, however, that's it. See you next time. Cheers.